What happens when a spoiled billionaire's son is thrown into the gritty world of trucking, stripped of his wealth, his name, and his power? Will he crumble under the weight of real work, or rise to discover a strength he never knew he had? Frank Calder's reflection smirked back at him from the mirror. Designer jacket, perfectly styled dark hair, expensive watch glinting under the nightclub lights. The VIP section pulsed with energy. Models lounged on velvet couches. Champagne bottles popped. Laughter ricocheted off glass walls. Outside, a line of paparazzi waited. "Man, I own this town," Frank muttered, checking his phone. Social media notifications flooded in photos, tags, reposts. He scrolled past one video already hitting thousands of views. Himself, at a recent party, arrogantly making fun of truckers. "Can you believe those guys?" Frank had slurred in the clip, mimicking a southern accent. "Hauling boxes for a living, sweating like animals. Meanwhile, I'm here, born into the throne." That night he hadn't cared. But now the comments were vicious. "Entitled brat. Disrespecting the people who make his daddy's money. What a loser." The next morning, Frank's hangover was brutal. Sunglasses barely shielded him from the daylight as his driver brought him to Calder Logistics HQ. A sleek skyscraper with tinted windows and a minimalist lobby. His father, Richard Calder, was waiting. Tall, silver-haired, and imposing, Richard stood behind his massive desk, watching the video loop on a screen. His jaw was clenched tight. "You've humiliated this family, Frank." Frank raised a hand lazily. "Relax, Dad. It's just—" "No," Richard's voice cut like a whip. "No more excuses." Frank's smirk faded. "You want to inherit this empire? Fine. But first, you're going to earn it. You'll go to our company. And until you change your attitude, you don't deserve our family's money." The next 2 hours were a blur. Frank barely processed the rapid orders, the paperwork, the hastily packed duffel bag shoved into his arms. He kept waiting for the punchline, the last-minute save. But there was none. That afternoon, Frank stood on the cracked concrete lot of a Calder Logistics trucking hub, staring up at massive rigs rumbling to life. His sleek sports car had been taken. His luxury watch, gone. In its place, he wore a standard company uniform. Navy blue shirt with a Calder patch, stiff denim jeans, and scuffed work boots. A gruff man in his 50s, burly, with thick arms and a sunburned neck, approached. "You the new guy?" the man barked. "Yeah, I guess," Frank muttered. "Name?" Frank opened his mouth, paused, then remembered. No special treatment. "Fred. Fred Thompson." The man grunted. "I'm Leroy. You'll be riding with me this week. Let's see if you can handle it, Fred." Frank's first shock came 5 minutes later when Leroy made him help secure a massive load with thick straps, his hands blistering almost immediately. "Careful, city boy." Leroy smirked. "That pretty skin of yours won't last long out here." By nightfall, Frank was exhausted. The truck's cab was cramped. The air smelled faintly of sweat and diesel, and every bump in the road jarred his spine. He leaned his head against the window, staring out at endless stretches of highway, wondering how his life had come to this. At a dusty truck stop, Leroy and a few other drivers gathered for coffee. "Who's the kid?" One of them, Maria, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, asked, narrowing her gaze. "Some newbie," Leroy shrugged. "Soft as butter. We'll see how long he lasts." Frank tried to join in, but his attempt at casual banter fell flat. His manicured hands, his awkward posture, his cluelessness about the routes. It all stuck out. Back in the cab, Leroy glanced over. "Listen, kid. I don't know who you are or why you're here, but out here, you pull your weight or you're out." Frank bit back a retort. As the truck roared back onto the highway, Frank realized he was completely alone. No bodyguards, no VIP lounges, no family name to protect him. Just the road, the freight, and the long, punishing miles ahead. And for the first time, a flicker of doubt crept into his chest. The days blurred together in endless stretches of gray asphalt and battered highway signs. Frank's back ached. His fingers were raw from ratchet straps, and the inside of his mouth tasted like cheap gas station coffee. He hadn't expected Leroy to ditch him so fast, but after the first week, the older driver had tossed Frank's duffel onto the lot and said gruffly, "You're not my problem anymore, rich boy." Now, Frank found himself standing awkwardly beside Carla. She was in her late 40s, wiry and tough-looking, with short, jet-black hair streaked with silver. Her face was sharply lined, her arms roped with sinew from decades on the road. A jagged scar traced her left forearm. Frank noticed but didn't dare ask. "You're the kid I'm stuck with?" she said, unimpressed, looking him up and down. "Yeah, I guess so," Frank muttered. Carla scoffed. "Great, just what I needed. A babysitting gig." The cab of Carla's truck was neater than Leroy's but colder. No bobbleheads, no fuzzy dice, no dashboard trinkets. Just a clean set of tools, a precise logbook, and a few faded photos of two smiling kids taped above the glove compartment. Frank glanced at them briefly before she shot him a sharp look. "Don't touch anything." They set off, rolling east through flat plains and into mountain country. It wasn't long before Frank hit his breaking point. The first breakdown happened outside Amarillo, a burst tire. Carla barked orders as Frank clumsily fumbled with the replacement. The hot sun beat down, sweat stinging his eyes. He winced as he scraped his knuckles on the jagged rim. "God, you're hopeless," Carla muttered, shaking her head. But after a long pause, she stepped forward and wordlessly showed him the right way to thread the jack. By the third day, sleep deprivation kicked in hard. Carla took the night shifts. Frank sat in the passenger seat, jolted awake every time the rig hit a bump. His phone, once his lifeline, had no signal in these stretches. For the first time, there were no social media distractions, no lifelines to the outside world. "Why do you even do this?" he finally asked one night, unable to stand the silence. Carla snorted. "What drive? Yeah, this job. All this sacrifice. Missing birthdays, anniversaries, whatever." She shot him a withering look. "You think we do it for the glory? I just don't know. I guess I never thought about it." Carla's face softened slightly. "That's obvious." She sighed. "Look, kid, you want to know why I'm still out here? After my husband cheated on me while I was hauling freight across the country? After my son stopped calling because I missed too many of his games? It's not because I love the open road or whatever romantic crap you're imagining. It's because this job pays the bills. Simple as that." Frank fell silent. In the dark cab, he stared out at the rain-slicked highway, headlights cutting tunnels through the mist. Somewhere, a memory stirred. A much younger Frank, maybe 10 years old, standing at the big bay window of the family estate, watching his father leave on yet another business trip. Richard Calder's sharp suit, his determined stride, the way he barely glanced back at his son. "Your dad tough on you or something?" Carla's voice broke through his thoughts. Frank flinched. "What? You've got that look." Frank forced a smile. "Nah, he just expects a lot." But that night, as he lay awake in the truck's cramped sleeper, Frank admitted to himself that expectations weren't the problem. It was the distance, the endless, cold distance that had been between him and his father his entire life. By the end of the week, storms had rolled in, thick black clouds coiling over the mountains as they wound their way through a narrow, twisting pass. Carla gripped the wheel tight, her knuckles pale. "We should pull over," Frank said nervously, watching sheets of rain hammer the windshield. Carla shook her head. "We're behind schedule. No choice." Suddenly, a crack of thunder split the sky. A fallen tree blocked part of the road ahead, forcing Carla to swerve. The trailer lurched violently, and for a terrifying moment, Frank felt the whole rig tilt. "Hold on," Carla shouted, wrestling the wheel. Frank's hands clenched the armrest so hard his nails dug in. His heart pounded in his chest as they skidded, fishtailing toward the guardrail. Finally, with a hard slam of the brakes, Carla brought the truck to a shuddering stop. For a long, breathless moment, neither of them spoke. Then Frank, trembling, let out a shaky laugh. "Jesus Christ, we almost died." Carla turned, her face pale but steady. "Welcome to the job, kid." Outside, the storm howled. Inside the cab, for the first time, something unspoken passed between them. Not quite trust, not quite friendship, but the first crack in the walls they both carried. And for Frank, it was the first moment he realized. This journey was going to change him in ways he wasn't ready for. The night after the storm should have brought relief. Instead, it delivered disaster. Coming down the mountain pass, the brakes gave out. It happened so fast Frank barely had time to scream. 1 second, they were coasting cautiously. The next, Carla's face went pale as she pumped the pedal. "Damn it, no response," she barked, yanking the gear shift, trying to slow the rig. The semi roared down the incline, gaining dangerous speed. The headlights caught the tight curves of the mountain road ahead. One mistake, and they were over the edge. "Hold tight," Carla shouted. Her arms strained as she fought the wheel, guiding the truck toward an uphill runoff ramp. A last-ditch emergency escape carved into the side of the mountain. Gravel crunched and bounced under the tires as they hit the ramp, slowing, skidding, jolting. Finally, the rig shuddered to a stop. Frank's breath came in short, panicked gasps. His hands shook uncontrollably. Carla leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. Hell of a night. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to strand them. There was no cell signal, no passing tow trucks. They were stuck until morning. Carla rummaged through the storage compartments and produced a small camping stove. Frank watched as she calmly built a fire on a patch of gravel by the edge of the rest stop, the flames flickering in the cold mountain air. He sat down awkwardly beside her, wrapping his arms around his knees. For a while, they sat in silence, watching sparks dance upward into the night. Finally, Carla broke it. "My husband used to run these routes," she said quietly, her voice softened by memory. "Back when the company actually cared about drivers. He was the one who mapped the safest paths through this whole region." Frank looked at her, surprised. "Really? That's kind of incredible." Carla gave a small, bitter laugh. "Yeah, he thought so too, until he started pushing back." Frank frowned. Pushing back? On the pressure, on the deadlines, on the way they kept shaving off minutes, ignoring maintenance, squeezing drivers until they cracked. Carla poked the fire absently. He raised concerns, told them it wasn't safe. They thanked him by cutting his routes and pushing him out. Said he was too slow for the modern pace. The flames crackled between them. Frank shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know. I never saw that side of the business." Carla gave him a long, assessing look. "No, I bet you didn't." Her words weren't cruel, but they cut deep. Frank stared into the fire, his thoughts churning. He could still hear his father's voice in his head. "You've been handed everything. Don't waste it." Except it never felt like a gift. It felt like a weight he was always about to drop. Quietly, he spoke. "Do you know what it's like to live your whole life knowing you'll never measure up?" Carla raised an eyebrow. "Measure up to what?" "My father, Richard Calder. You know the name." Carla stiffened slightly. "Yeah, I know it. He built all this. The trucks, the routes, the contracts. And I'm supposed to carry it forward." Frank's voice cracked. "But all I ever hear is how I'm reckless, spoiled, useless. And the worst part is, maybe they're right." For a long moment, Carla didn't answer. Then she reached into her jacket, pulled out a flask, and took a slow sip. "You want my advice, kid?" Frank looked up, wary. "Stop hiding behind the name, behind the money. You're out here now, really out here. You've seen what the job costs. So what are you gonna do? Go back home? Pretend none of it matters? Or actually stand up for the people breaking their backs to keep your father's empire running?" Her words hung heavy in the cold air. Frank swallowed hard. "I don't know." Carla gave a tired smile. "Figure it out. Because trust me, out here, nobody gives a damn who your daddy is." As the night deepened, Frank felt the first flicker of something new between them. Not just partnership, but a fragile respect. But miles away, in a dingy roadside diner, someone else was starting to put the pieces together. Dave, one of Carla's old rivals and a longtime driver for the company, sat hunched over a plate of greasy fries, scrolling through his phone. He'd heard the rumors about a Calder kid out on the road, learning the ropes. When he'd seen Frank at the last depot, soft hands, expensive boots, too many questions. His instincts had kicked in. "Who the hell are you, kid?" Dave muttered under his breath, pulling up the company records on his tablet. Outside, the neon diner sign buzzed faintly in the night, casting Dave's shadow long and sharp against the window. The dawn brought no peace. After a sleepless night at the rest stop, Frank and Carla finally managed to get a tow down the mountain. Their rig limped back to the nearest depot, battered but intact. Word was already waiting for them. Dave stood near the office doors, arms folded. A smug grin stretched across his face. "Well, well," he drawled as Frank stepped out of the cab. "Richard Calder's little boy, riding along like one of us." Carla's jaw tightened. Frank, pale but steady, squared his shoulders. "You figured it out." Dave gave a short laugh. "Didn't take much. You're not exactly built for blending in." His voice was sharp, but the crowd gathering behind him was harder to read. Truckers from all over the yard, curious, skeptical, whispering among themselves. Frank raised his hands. "Yeah, it's true. I'm Frank Calder." He took a deep breath. "But I didn't come here to spy on you or play boss." His eyes swept over the group. "I came here because I needed to understand." The yard went quiet. A rough voice broke the silence. "Understand what, rich boy?" It was Lou, a veteran driver with silver streaks in his beard, arms marked with faded tattoos. He stepped forward, eyes sharp. Frank met his gaze. "What it costs to keep this company moving, to keep my family's empire alive." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed on. "I've been arrogant. I didn't know. But now I do." Another voice chimed in, a younger driver, Maya, who'd helped them at a checkpoint days earlier. "We saw you out there, in the storm, in the mud. You didn't quit." A ripple went through the crowd. Murmurs, nods. Dave's smirk faded. Carla stepped forward, resting a firm hand on Frank's shoulder. "He didn't just ride along, Dave. He earned his miles." The depot manager's office door opened. A tall, imposing figure emerged. Richard Calder himself, impeccably dressed, expression carved in stone. He walked toward the group, his presence sucking the air from the yard. "Frank," Richard said coolly. "Inside. Now." The office door slammed shut behind them. The room felt smaller than Frank remembered. The windows thick with grime, the heavy wooden desk cluttered with papers and old trophies. Richard folded his arms. "What were you thinking?" Frank swallowed hard. "I was thinking that maybe it's time we stop running this company like we own everyone's lives." His father's brow arched. "Excuse me? You built this company on their backs, Dad. The drivers, the mechanics, the dispatchers. But you treat them like they're replaceable." Frank's voice steadied as he spoke. "They deserve better." Richard laughed, low and dismissive. "They have jobs. That's what they deserve." "We're not a charity, Frank. It's not charity to give people safer routes, reasonable deadlines, and a living wage." Frank shot back. "You're burning them out for profit." Carla's husband, Dave's crew, they're all one bad month away from breaking. Richard's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what it takes to run this business." "I do now." Frank stepped closer. "I lived it. And I'm telling you, we need to change." For a moment, father and son stood locked in silence, a lifetime of tension between them. Richard spoke softly, almost a whisper. "You'd throw all this away? For them?" Frank's throat tightened. "No, I'd fight for them. I'm not here to walk away. I'm here to rebuild." Richard studied him carefully. "You're serious?" "I am." Outside the window, the truckers waited. Carla stood at the front, arms crossed, watching the office with unreadable eyes. Richard turned to the window, then back to Frank. "If you do this, you're taking on more than you understand." Frank nodded. "Maybe, but I choose to carry it." Slowly, Richard sat down. For the first time, something uncertain flickered in his expression. a tiny crack in the mask. By evening, the depot lights glowed against the darkening sky. Frank stepped outside, facing the crowd. "I'm not making promises I can't keep," he began. "But I will fight for safer routes, better pay, and a seat at the table for the people who make this company run." His voice carried, stronger now. "This isn't just about profit anymore. It's about respect." The truckers stared. Then slowly, scattered applause began. A few claps from Maya, a nod from Lou. Even Carla gave him a small, approving smirk. Dave folded his arms, reluctant but thoughtful. In that moment, Frank realized the legacy he'd been handed wasn't set in stone. It could be rewritten by his own choices, his own grit. Not just the weight of his father's empire, but the weight he chose to carry. This story makes us reflect on what real success means, and how often we discover our true strength when we leave our comfort zones behind. What would you have done if you were Frank? Would you walk away or stay and fight? Comment below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more unforgettable stories like this.